So in this particular summit, inclusivity and the sustainability is the key theme. That means the entire discussion, entire idea of this grouping is now going to focus upon the inclusivity and the sustainability. Inclusivity means talking about the themes like Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. Along with that, sustainability means ensuring that present order, whatever present order is, whether it is in the international relations, whether it is polity, whether it is economy, whether it is environmental perspective, it should be sustainable. That means for the future generation also we should be handing over a globe or the world that is livable. There has been certain changes over a period of time that we had observed with respect to these particular ASEAN member countries. So as we have discussed, 1967 was the year when this particular grouping was formed. And when this grouping was formed in 1967, since then roughly till 1990, there was Cold War that was continuing. All these contexts, it is important that these countries are also looking towards the countries like India to deliver more, to give more, comparatively having better relation in order to find out an alternative. You have seen the example of Philippines doing the BrahMos deal. You have seen the example of Indonesia doing the BrahMos deal. So this is the importance of defense cooperation, security cooperation, counter-terrorism cooperation. These are the avenues of the cooperation between these two regions. So in 1991, when through Look East policy, India started boosting its relation with the Southeast Asian country, what became the anchor of this relation? It was ASEAN, which was the then grouping that was growing, because the many other countries which were under the influence of Soviet now were joining the ASEAN. Hello everyone, I am Vishal Sir, and today we are going to discuss a very important topic that had recently happened with respect to the ASEAN also, regarding the ASEAN Summit of 2025. So now as you can see on your screen, the ASEAN 25, can India-ASEAN anchor the Indo-Pacific Order? So this brings us the question that from the perspective of UPSC, how this particular topic is important, even from static and even from the dynamic perspective. So as you can see, one such aspect that how India and ASEAN can anchor the Indo-Pacific Order. So what is this particular Indo-Pacific Order is? And before beginning with the discussion, exactly what is ASEAN, right? Even apart from that, why we are talking about this? So there has been a recent summit of ASEAN, right? So we have to also talk about what are the key takeaways as far as this particular summit is concerned. Having discussed about that, also it's the relation as far as the India is concerned, because India is having the historical ties with this particular region, whether it is historically, culturally. But even apart from that, recently there have been further boosting up of the relationship between India and this specific grouping. So we have to also talk about this, the chronology of the events, and also apart from that, what is the significance of the India and ASEAN relation. That is also very, very important, because UPSC is focusing upon these particular themes. But having discussed about all these things, what comes as an important aspect that UPSC will be more interested upon, that what are the recent challenges. So talking about the significance as well as the challenges will be also very, very important, and how India and ASEAN can progress towards ensuring the anchoring of the Indo-Pacific Order. So all these things we are going to unpack in this entire discussion of roughly 25 minutes. So let's start the discussion. So now whenever there is any specific summit, one thing which should be very, very clear, that what is the agenda of that particular summit, and that is generally reflected in the form of the theme that this particular summit is going to take. So in this particular summit, inclusivity and the sustainability is the key theme. That means the entire discussion, entire idea of this grouping is now going to focus upon the inclusivity and the sustainability. Inclusivity means talking about the themes like Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. Along with that, sustainability means ensuring that present order, whatever present order is, whether it is in the international relations, whether it is polity, whether it is economy, whether it is environmental perspective, it should be sustainable. That means for the future generation also we should be handing over a globe or the world that is livable, right? So that's what this particular theme is all about. Now, talking about the grouping, that what exactly ASEAN is. So the full form is Association of Southeast Asian Nation. So there is a geographical construct that was already there, as you can see in the form of the map, that there are certain countries which are geographically lying in the southern eastern part of Asia or the southeastern part of Asia, that is forming the Southeast Asian nation. But in the form of a formal construct, this particular grouping came into existence in 1967 through the Bangkok Declaration, through a meeting that had held in the Bangkok, Thailand. But did that particular meeting included all the members that are presently member of ASEAN? The answer is no. So there were total 5 founding members of ASEAN that were part of it at that point of time. It was including Singapore. It included, apart from Singapore, it included Thailand. Then it included Indonesia. It included Malaysia, and then it included Philippines. So these were the 5 founding members of this particular grouping. Now, UPSC in 2025, they had asked 2 questions specifically about the grouping that were concerned with India. For example, BIMSTEC was there and BRICS was there. And the way they have framed the statement, there can be a question, because the one exact statement was these were the founding members. So when we are reading about any specific organization, we should be having a clear idea about what were the important countries which were part of it, whether India was a founding member or India is a member or not. So these things should be very, very clear. Later on, there were multiple countries joined till 1999. There were 10 members, and this was the grouping that was doing every year summit in the form of the ASEAN summit. So this summit that we are talking about is one such summit. But recently in October, that means presently only, there have been the 11th member, or we can say in 2000s, there have been first expansion of this grouping, and the Timor-Leste became the member of this in October 2025. That means now the grouping includes 11 members. So the Timor-Leste became the member. So how many countries? There are 11 countries now. Now, this is an organization which is also having a secretariat which is doing the day-to-day tasks like your bureaucracy, right? So in that particular case, it is in Jakarta, Indonesia, which is doing the office work for ASEAN. Now, there is an article 1.15 of ASEAN Charter. This ASEAN Charter is basically a rule book. So charter of any specific grouping is the rule book that how this grouping or organization is going to work upon. So in the article 1.15 of the ASEAN Charter, it has been mentioned about the ASEAN centrality. So it talks about the ASEAN centrality. That means as a grouping, this particular countries which are member countries of ASEAN are going to ensure the ASEAN centrality, means keeping the interest of ASEAN in mind. They will not do any activity which is hampering or will be counterproductive to the ASEAN interest. So that is the most important thing that these particular countries are going to talk about. So these are the countries, and you can see the location of the recent joinee in this particular grouping, which is the Timor-Leste, which is part of the East Timor, right? Basically, Timor jo island hai, entire this particular Timor island, here this is the country Timor-Leste or the East Timor. Basically, there is the Timor island, and the part of, a part of this is the Timor-Leste, which is the country, because UPSC can also sometimes focus upon the location of the country. Now, talking about that why ASEAN matters now, because if there is any specific grouping which is also important from the India's perspective, from the Indian foreign services related things, and also having a preference that you might be feeling in your def, which is maybe giving the preference to the foreign services, these might be the things that can be asked very handy with you, and also in the means examination you can expect the questions like this. So this was the 47th summit of ASEAN, right? So it was the 47th summit, and in this particular summit, what had happened, basically those things should be of our concern. So in the 47th summit of ASEAN, what were the important key takeaways? Because on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit, there is India-ASEAN summit, all that is also taking place. So what were the outcomes of that? So first is regarding the ASEAN-India plan of action. So India, through a series of agreements, series of steps that were needed in order to boost the bilateral partnership, now we have reached to the stage of the comprehensive and strategic partnership, right? So when we are having the comprehensive and the strategic partnership since 2022, now this particular comprehensive and strategic partnership discusses the cooperation in diverse areas. It is not only about culture, it is not only about connectivity, it is not only about polity, it is not only about economy, but it includes all the spectrum, including defense, including geopolitics, including security, including counterterrorism. So that particular cooperation has to be boosted. So in 2026 to 2030, there is a target that has been taken in order to implement this comprehensive strategic partnership, boosting the cooperation between the India and the ASEAN member countries. So when I am talking about that India and ASEAN, that means India is not a member of ASEAN grouping. Right? So that should be very, very clear. Next is 2026 is designated as the ASEAN-India Year of Maritime Cooperation. Now, when we have seen the location of ASEAN countries, they are the maritime countries, or basically they are majorly these are the island countries. So in that particular context, there is maritime importance of these countries. Whether you talk about blue economy, which is the ocean or the marine-based economy, including food, fuel, resources, including even the conflict. For example, the conflict over the maritime region in the form of 9-dash line, with certain countries in conflict with the China's territorial claim in that particular region. So when we are talking about this, it is important for these countries to provide an alternative, and India as a very major power of this particular region of South Asia, having convergence with Southeast Asia, this becomes a very, very important aspect from the perspective of the countries like India to cooperate in the maritime domain with the ASEAN countries. That's why ASEAN-India Year of Maritime Cooperation, that has also been talked about in order to include, because now try to include the theme inclusivity as well as the sustainability. In both manner, we are going to cooperate upon. Next is proposed establishment of the Center for the Southeast Asian Studies at Nalanda. So historically when we talk about and culturally when we discuss that, Nalanda held special place as far as the India's connection with the Eastern Asia, Southeast Asia is concerned, because many scholars from East Asia, from the countries like China, from different other countries traveled to Nalanda, studied regarding Buddhism and many other things, and went back to their own country, influencing the religion available there, right? And India is having the cultural imprint in Southeast Asia also. So in that particular context, Center of Southeast Asian Studies at Nalanda is going to further boost the educational tourism. It is also going to talk about the cultural enrichment between these two countries, and can become a very important aspect as far as the diaspora diplomacy is concerned. Next is to host the East Asia Summit in the Maritime Heritage Festival at Lothal. So regarding the maritime heritage, because Lothal is a very prominent site, it is a Indus Valley civilization site, a prominent port site that is related with the India's culture. And when we are talking about the Southeast Asian countries, the culture is one such thing which is very, very prominent. Lastly, 2025 as the ASEAN-India Year of Tourism. That means, again, if you try to club these things, whether you talk about blue economy, whether you talk about strategic partnership economy perspective, whether you talk about the Center for Southeast Asian Studies, whether you talk about maritime heritage, so all these things have certain component of tourism. So in order to boost the comprehensive tourism, there is a need to ensure the year of tourism. That's why 2025 was designated as the India-ASEAN Year of Tourism, right? And these are the important key takeaways, can be directly or indirectly asked in the examination, or even if not asked, in the mains answer, if there is any scope of quoting the groupings ka relation between India and ASEAN, there you can quote a brief about these particular declaration or the outcome of the recent ASEAN summit. Now, when we are talking about the India's relation with ASEAN country, obviously it was not like since the independence, the relation was same. So what was the relation of ASEAN countries with India at the time period of independence, and how this particular relationship basically we can say evolved over a period of time? We can say that there has been certain changes over a period of time that we had observed with respect to these particular ASEAN member countries. So as we have discussed, 1967 was the year when this particular grouping was formed. And when this grouping was formed in 1967, since then roughly till 1990, there was Cold War that was continuing. And majority of the countries which were then member of the ASEAN, they were tilted towards the US. But what was the stand of India during the Cold War time period? India was a non-aligned country but having specific relation with the Soviet. So India was under the Soviet security umbrella. Now 1991, after the disintegration of the Soviet Union, now that security umbrella has gone. So then after that, what had happened? India was in the seek of market. India wanted to cooperate with different countries, and hence India in 1991 initiated the Look East policy. That means now we are trying to diverse our interests. We are trying to see towards other countries in order to boost the cooperation. And then the Southeast Asian countries came into play. So in 1991, when through Look East policy, India started boosting its relation with the Southeast Asian country, what became the anchor of this relation? It was ASEAN, which was the then grouping that was growing, because the many other countries which were under the influence of Soviet now were joining the ASEAN. So India was also cooperating with ASEAN. 1992 was the time period when obviously now India and ASEAN are cooperating. Now there has to be certain relation, because this is not specifically talking about something from the ASEAN summit perspective, but here in 1992, India started cooperating directly with ASEAN and became a sectoral dialogue partner. So initially during this time period, we can say it was the economy. That was the major pillar, because India, a large country, has multiple needs. So in that particular sense, we needed a supplier of multiple goods, and also India wanted a market in order to supply its own goods also. So the economy became the major pillar. Now 1996 was the year when this particular sectoral dialogue partner, means in certain sectors only we are going to cooperate. Now that sectoral approach became the full manner में cooperation started, and India became the member of, not exactly member, but became the dialogue partner and became the member of ASEAN Regional Forum. So ARF ka member India became in 1996, and this particular organization was talking about the interest of the Southeast Asian region, economic, political and the geopolitical interest in that particular region. So it was a discussion forum, which is a associated forum, and this is a symbol of, one such symbol of the ASEAN centrality. Then 2002 mein this relationship further boosted, and now from here onwards India started taking partnership in the ASEAN summit, and ASEAN summit ke sidelines pe there was India-ASEAN summit. So ASEAN summit is for ASEAN countries only, but India, like for example China ASEAN summit, Japan ASEAN summit, like this on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit there are multiple meetings. So India ASEAN summit started, so it became the summit level partner. So here the relationship got strengthened, and since then every year India is taking part in the ASEAN summits, and along with that on the sidelines of that India ASEAN summit is also taking place. Then 2005 was the year when there was a new initiative that was started as far as the ASEAN is concerned and the ASEAN centrality is concerned. It is the East Asia Summit. So East Asia Summit was initiated with the ASEAN member countries. Along with that, there are 6 FTA member countries. So these countries included India, China, Japan, South Korea, Australia and New Zealand. Along with that, there are 2 more countries which are US and Russia. They became member of the East Asia Summit, and since then India started having discussion in the economical, politic and many other aspects, including the strategic one, through the East Asia Summit. So this summit was focusing upon the affairs in the East Asian region and the Southeast Asian region, specifically focusing upon the geopolitical, geostrategic and the geoeconomic interest. Similarly, another organization or the groupings that was formed as a pillar of the ASEAN centrality is the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting. So already there was ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting that was going on since early 2000s, but that was expanded to include multiple other countries, including the defense related personals of these countries, which are important from the ASEAN's perspective. And this is also one such pillar of the ASEAN centrality, means keeping the affairs of ASEAN at center stage of any specific cooperation. So since then, 2010 onwards, India became the member of the ADMM, plus also India is cooperating. Now that stage is already set. We have seen that we have gone for the economic cooperation. We have started boosting our relationship, and 2002 mein one such prominent theme other that was there regarding the through northeastern region of India, we were focusing towards the connectivity. So it was popularized by the then government regarding the look east through the northeast. So that means since the Myanmar is one such country from which we are having the physical connectivity with the ASEAN countries. So in that particular case, if the northeastern region has to be developed, there has to be better relation, better connectivity with the Southeast Asian countries or the ASEAN countries, right? Now, when I have told you that the stage is already set, and here in 2012, it was the appropriate time in order to sign the strategic partnership. The strategic partnership was signed in order to ensure cooperation in multiple domains, including strategic, political, economic, security, and many other manner. Now, this strategic partnership was already there, but in 2014, the then government, what they have decided, that it is already look east since 1992. We are seeing that, yes, we are having this particular 1991, 1-2 onwards, we are having the look east policy. We have strengthened our relationship with ASEAN countries, but now it is the time to act upon that. That's why the government came up with the 4 C's, which is culture, commerce, connectivity, and the capacity building, and going for a more agile approach, more delivery wala approach. That means not only commitment, but the delivering the promises. And that's why there was a policy that evolved after it, which is known as the Act East policy. So this particular Act East policy was to act towards whatever we are committing, and hence this Look East was converted into Act East. Now come to 2022, where this particular strategic partnership was further elevated in order to go for the comprehensive and the strategic partnership. This means that the level of cooperation is going to get boosted. There will be comparatively better approach, better development between these particular 2 regions, connecting even Southeast Asia and the Southeast Asia, right? So this is regarding from the Look East to the Act East, and now talking about integrating the East region. That means ensuring the holistic development in this particular region. Now, having discussed about this, see, whenever there will be analysis that will be asked regarding the India and ASEAN relationship, there will be certain things which has to be quoted. For example, significance. Why we are discussing about this grouping that much, right? So what is the significance of ASEAN for India? Where does ASEAN stands as far as the geopolitical, geostrategic, and geoeconomic aspects of India are concerned, and the region is concerned? And along with that, if we see India's strategy, for example, India is talking about the Indo-Pacific strategy. ASEAN is also talking about the centrality of ASEAN in this particular Asia-Pacific region. So in that sense, one thing which is very, very clear is about the significance and the cooperation between ASEAN and India. So that's how the significance of ASEAN is there for India. So what is the significance that ASEAN is holding as far as India is concerned? So the first significance is the support to ASEAN centrality. So India never says that we are at the anchor of the Indo-Pacific. Since the name includes Indo, that means it is about the India. No, India says that yes, it is expanded from the Africa to the Americas, but the ASEAN is at the center stage. Whether you see the Act East policy of India, whether you talk about the Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative, which is in the convergence with the Asia-Pacific outlook of the ASEAN countries, or ASEAN outlook of the Indo-Pacific, that particular thing is converging. And you might have also seen regarding the Sagar, which is the security and growth for all in the region, and now that has converted into Mahasagar, which is the mutual and holistic advancement of security and growth in this particular region. So all these are interconnected, and this is ensuring that India is keeping ASEAN at the center stage in the Indo-Pacific region. Next is talking about trade. So see, ASEAN countries, specifically there are certain countries including Singapore, Malaysia, with which India is having comparatively better economic discussion and we can say comparative dependency as far as, let's say, the semiconductor, electronic equipments, etc. are concerned. Now, why so? Because India has historically connected with these particular region, and along with that, comparatively, when we talk about the technological development, these countries are good with that. So we have to also take the advantage of this region, but at the same time, the trade has to go in the bilateral manner. So in order to boost the trade relationship, we came up with the free trade agreement, which is also known as the ASEAN-India Trade in Goods Agreement, which was signed in 2009 and enacted in 2010 onwards. Now that particular free trade agreement obviously had to deliver equal benefit to both the region. Yes, to some extent we can say it is skewed towards the ASEAN countries, but yes, it has boosted the relation of trade between these two regions. $123 billion is the roughly present trade volume between these two regions, and along with that, ASEAN stands as the fourth largest trade partner of India. And along with that, yes, deficit is one such issue, but yes, we are talking about the trade is one such pillar, and along with that, there is the bilateral trade that is getting boosted. Next is counterbalancing China. So see, any region do not want to give up its sovereignty, its own strategic advantage to any other country, be it any major power or the, let's say, superpower. So in that particular case, there is China, in whose backyard the Southeast Asian countries are lying. Along with that, there is a resident power, which is United States, which used to be a global power, or which we can say which used to be a superpower. Right now, it is a considerably important power. But when we are talking about counterbalancing China, that means when China is going towards these countries in an aggressive manner, India provides an approach, or India provides an alternative solution in this particular regard in order to counterbalance China. So ASEAN-India joint statement on the maritime cooperation of 2023, which talked about ensuring free, open, secure Indo-Pacific region, and apart from that, ensuring the dispute resolution in a peaceful, along with the mutual settlement. That means there should not be any aggressive policies that any country should adopt in this particular region, whether it is China or any other country. Along with that, China is coming up with this Belt and Road Initiative. China is pursuing aggressive checkbook diplomacy. See, in all these contexts, it is important that these countries are also looking towards the countries like India to deliver more, to give more, comparatively having better relation in order to find out an alternative. You have seen the example of Philippines doing the BrahMos deal. You have seen the example of Indonesia doing the BrahMos deal. So this is the importance of defense cooperation, security cooperation, counter-terrorism cooperation. These are the avenues of the cooperation between these two regions. Talking about connectivity, whether it is the India, Myanmar, Thailand trilateral highway, which is connecting the More region in Manipur to the Mysore region in Thailand, going through Myanmar region. Along with that, the Kaladan multimodal transit and transport project, which is connecting the West Bengal region, then through the Bay of Bengal. There is Kaladan river through the Sitwe port. There is Kaladan river. Then from the Kaletwa and Paletwa region, it is passing to the and ultimately reaching towards the Mizoram region. So basically what it is doing, it is connecting West Bengal with Mizoram with the alternative connectivity, not solely relying on the chicken snack corridor. Talking about the BIMSTEC ASEAN logistics grid, which is the proposed grid in order to connect the South Asia and the Southeast Asia. So this is these are certain connectivity measure. Lastly, multilateralism, because see, ASEAN now including 11 member countries do not want the major powers dominance or control on these particular countries. Similarly, India also do not want the same. A common thing between these particular two group of countries as well as the country like India is they want the reforms at the international institutions, whether it is UNSC, whether it is IMF, whether it is World Bank. They want that the world order should be representative of the current dynamics and not the dynamics which emerged after the World War II. तो जरूरी ये भी समझना है that whatever that was there after the World War II, that is not exactly same right now. The countries have emerged. Certain countries which were then powerful are now declined. So in that case, these are supporting multilateralism, and this is what is common between these two regions. Now, having discussed about this, so these are certain things. This is the Kaladan multimodal transport and transit project, Kolkata to Sitwe, Paletwa, and then ultimately reaching to Aizawl. This is the IMT India, Myanmar, Thailand trilateral highway starting from More, Manipur to the Mysore region in Thailand, and then ultimately connecting the entire region of Southeast Asia. This is the proposed India-Mekong economic corridor which is there, which is connecting from Chennai region. Then apart from that, then connecting here, then it is connecting till Ho Chi Minh, which is in Vietnam. Along with that, there are multiple other projects that are being proposed. So these are certain things which are going on, and also the proposed cooperation between these particular region and countries. Now, talking about the ASEAN countries, obviously there are certain challenges also. So first challenge is the external pressure. Now these countries have to choose between either China or US. Now US is pressuring these particular countries. Otherwise US is giving threat in the form of the trade and the tariff barrier. What China is doing? China is contesting their territorial claim. China is seizing their naval vessels, right? So there is a external pressure. So there is US-China rivalry. This is one such issue. Along with that, there are conflicts that are also going on, for example, and again here the role of the major power, that is important. For example, recently you have seen the Thailand versus Cambodia ka issue over the land border, right? So in that case also there was involvement of these particular countries, right? Apart from that, there is the tariff and trade barrier. Right, so these are the external issues that this particular group is lingering with. Next is internal weakness. So when we are talking about the countries which are looking after the ASEAN region, so there has to be comparatively better cooperation between these two countries. Now, internally, when you look towards Vietnam, now Vietnam have strong stand towards China, because it is having territorial contest. Philippines have strong stand with China. It is having contest on the Scarborough Shoal with China. But the point is that many such countries are overly dependent on China. For example, Laos, for example, Cambodia are overly dependent on China. So debt is very, very high. So in that particular case, there is no such convergence. Myanmar, there is complete instability. In this particular ASEAN summit also, the chair of the Myanmar was empty. So there is a lot of internal weakness. Apart from that, certain countries, if you see economic disparity, certain countries like Singapore, countries like Malaysia, countries like Thailand are more prosperous, but when you see Laos, you see the countries like Cambodia, they are comparatively weaker. So in that particular case, there is internal weakness also, whether they should support China, whether they should support US. So there is also debate over this. So this is the fractured grouping that is becoming over a period of time. Now, when we specifically talk about India, what are the issues that this grouping and India is facing? First is the delayed project. When we talk about the project, there is a completion related thing, not just the announcement. That is very, very important. If the delivery is slow, obviously the countries are not going to rely on you for a long period of time. That's why when there is, let's say, any kind of bureaucratic hurdle or maybe any other issues with that particular region, whether it is instability also, there is delay, and when there is delay, there is a lack of trust between the countries, which is one such issue. Another issue is the instability in Myanmar. So the country which is having the land border with India in the ASEAN countries is Myanmar. If there is instability, obviously we are not having the secure passage from that particular country and connecting the entire region. When the entire region is not recognizing the present government in Myanmar, so that is also causing one such concern. So in that cases, instability in Myanmar is also preventing the cohesion in this particular grouping. Next is the trade deficit. We have seen roughly $123 billion is the trade. When this is the trade, the deficit is roughly $45 billion. That means this much number of import are more than the export. That means this is creating a major dependency on the country's import than the export, and this is what the issue is. That's why India is talking about जो आपका free trade agreement था, free trade agreement, which is the ASEAN India Trade in Goods Agreement. That particular revamping of or the review of that particular agreement is also sort of, but the problem is that particular review is going on very, very slow. So India wanted comparatively fast track process in order to ensure the better availability of the concessions from these countries also, so that India can also export more, India can go for the better cooperation as far as defense and other development is concerned, right? Last is the rising Chinese influence. So see, despite these countries or many of these countries have the territorial contest with China or the maritime border dispute or maybe any other dispute, but at the end of the day, it is China which is delivering them. There is a Belt and Road Initiative, checkbook diplomacy of China, through which China is giving money and these countries are giving concessions in return. And many a time it has been observed that through the free trade agreement with China, when these countries are having, the Chinese goods through these countries are routing to India. So ultimately the China is getting benefited. So that's what is one such major concern between the India and this particular grouping is there. Now lastly, when we talk about the future outlook, what role India can play as far as the Indo-Pacific centrality, and in that particular region, ASEAN at the central position is concerned, and along with that, how this region, which is a pivot region in this entire regional geostrategy, how India and ASEAN relation can shape the future or shape tomorrow, right? So first in this is the ASEAN-India plan of action, which we have already talked about, that this particular ASEAN-India plan of action is going to ensure the better strategic engagement, strategic cooperation. It is not only talking about connectivity, but also talking about economy, also talking about the trade, specifically tourism, talking about culture, talking about people-to-people relation, diaspora. So all these things holistically have been talking about, and this is going to ensure comparatively better relation between this particular grouping. Also, there are certain mini-laterals. So these are mini-laterals which are formed for the specific purpose, and this is ensuring comparatively better integration of the region. So in that particular context, there is Quad, for example. This particular grouping is including the countries like Japan, India, Australia, and along with that, there is US that is part of it. So Quad, which is a major important organization in this particular region, this can also pave the way for strengthening the role of ASEAN in this region, not countering its role. There is Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative, and then simultaneously there is ASEAN Outlook of Indo-Pacific. So in that particular sense, these two convergence are very, very important in order to ensure the collaboration in the ASEAN centrality. Lastly, ASEAN community itself have the vision of the ASEAN community's vision of 2045, which is talking about that how down the line in next 20 years, how the cooperation is going to get boosted, how the entire regional structure is going to get altered, and how we are going to get the benefit of the sustainability, inclusivity, as well as the shared benefit. So this is also very, very important. And along with this, India and ASEAN have the 10-point discussion regarding all the field, including economy, polity, connectivity, security, defense, and all these things. This is going to ensure a comparatively better future for both these regions. So what we have discussed is regarding what is ASEAN. We have talked about how the relationship have evolved over a period of time. Because this particular timeline you can quote easily in the examination, and that is going to give examiner an idea that you are aware regarding this. We have also talked about the significance of ASEAN as a region for India. We have also discussed regarding that what were the important outcomes of this particular grouping. And having discussed about this, we have also seen what are the constraints that this ASEAN grouping is facing in general. There are internal and external weakness, and along with that, India and ASEAN relation is having. Lastly, we have seen that if we have to make the ASEAN-India partnership as the partnership for tomorrow, that what should be the steps that need to be incorporated in order to boost the relationship between these two region and the countries. So if successful, this is going to shape the entire South Asian and the Southeast Asian architecture. So with this, we are concluding this particular discussion. I hope this analysis is important. Just prepare a few notes out of it, and then you will be ready with this particular topic for your examination. So thank you very much. We'll meet again with another important and the interesting topic in the next week. Thank you.